Catherine the Great. Did you know the greatest ruler in Russian history wasn't even Russian? She was born a German princess, but destiny had her eye on the throne. She married into Russian royalty, but her husband, a weak czar with no love for the empire. So she overthrew him. With wit sharper than any sword, she seized the crown and ruled as empress. She modernized an empire, expanded its borders, and brought the Enlightenment to the East. While kings fell in Europe, she rose in St. Petersburg. This was Catherine the Great, not born to rule, but born to conquer. Today we're exploring Russia's golden age. Let's jump into it. Catherine II of Russia, better known as Catherine the Great, though she would later come to rule all of Russia, much of her childhood was spent in the German principality of Anhalt-Zerbst. Her father, Christian August, was the prince of the small state, and her mother, Johanna Elizabeth, was a princess of the House of Holstein-Gottorp. The couple were not especially wealthy or influential, but they did have a son before Sophie, Prince Peter, who they hoped would one day become the Emperor of Russia. That's because Peter had been promised the hand of Anna Ivanovna, heir presumptive to the Russian throne, making him a future Tsar. In order to prepare him for his future role, Peter was sent to live at the Russian imperial court in St. Petersburg when he turned 10 years old. This was in many ways a tremendous opportunity for Sophie's younger brother, but it also presented something of a problem. You see, their father was eager to see his son become the leader of Russia, but he didn't want to move to Russia himself. Instead, he wanted someone else to escort his son to St. Petersburg. So the young Peter would be accompanied by his mother, his sister Sophie, and a nanny. It was hardly ideal, but it was necessary. Once there, however, the young royals were received with open arms by the Russian imperial family. Anna was thrilled to be reunited with her betrothed, and everyone looked forward to celebrating their wedding in a few years. As part of the deal, Sophie and her parents were allowed to stay in St. Petersburg as well, living in luxury. But while she was initially treated warmly, the young princess soon became aware that she was something of an outsider. Even though her brother was set to become the future emperor, the fact was they weren't Russian, and neither were their parents. This led to tension between the royal siblings, with Peter often resenting his sister for being German. Meanwhile, Catherine's own parents were eager for their daughter to find a suitable marriage match back in Germany. Now that she was at the Russian imperial court, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to make an advantageous match for their daughter too. For these reasons, Catherine was sent to a prestigious boarding school for girls where she could learn all about Russian culture and history while also preparing for an unknown future. By age 15, Catherine was ready to marry, and her mother began actively looking for suitors. Her brother Peter was strongly opposed to the idea, insisting that she must marry a Russian nobleman, but it seemed the girl had other ideas. Catherine found herself attracted to a man named Sergei, the son of a prominent Russian nobleman. The two began seeing each other in secret, and they eventually made plans to elope. However, before they could carry out their plan, their secret was discovered, and Catherine was summoned to meet with the imperial court. Now furious that she had betrayed him and broken their agreement, Peter refused to speak to her, and the engagement to Sergei was quickly called off. All the while, the real reason for Catherine's opposition to the union had nothing to do with national pride, and everything to do with her brother's abusive behavior. Ever since her family had moved to Russia, Peter had been violent towards Catherine, treating her like a servant, and sometimes beating her for her mistakes. It was clear that the siblings had a difficult relationship, but things would soon get much worse. When Catherine turned 16 years old, her parents decided that she would finally return to Germany to live with them. They hoped this would put an end to her turbulent relationship with her brother, but instead, fate had other plans. You see, just a few months after Catherine left, Peter was arrested for planning to poison his cousin and rival, Anna Leopoldovna, who was next in line for the throne after their aunt, Anna Ivanovna. He was charged with the crime of lèse-majesté, meaning any action intended to humiliate or harm the monarch. As the most likely witness to the attempted poisoning, Catherine was recalled from Germany to testify against her brother. And when she arrived at the Russian court, it was clear that the entire royal family wanted nothing more than for her to condemn her brother and ensure his removal from the line of succession. Now, torn between her loyalty to her brother and her duty to the Russian monarchy, Catherine chose the latter, testifying against him and ending his hopes of ever ruling as emperor. It was a devastating blow to their parents as well, who were forced to watch as their older son was exiled forever from the Russian royal court. In the meantime, now that Peter was gone, it was up to Catherine to fulfill the original agreement and wed Anna Ivanovna's son, the new heir presumptive, Alexei. However, the ceremony was delayed time and time again as Anna grew sicker and sicker. Eventually, the young princess was forced to watch helplessly as her aunt passed away, officially making her the new Empress of Russia at age 23. Before her coronation, Catherine took on a new tutor, the man who would help her solidify her power and transform the nation. His name was Ivan Shuvalov, and he would be a major influence throughout her reign. The newlyweds went ahead with the wedding, and Catherine began learning the intricacies of running the vast empire. But it wasn't long before cracks began to show in her marriage. She soon realized that her husband, Alexei, was unfit to rule and had no interest in doing so. In fact, he was perfectly happy to let his mother's former advisors continue running the country on his behalf, while he pursued pleasure in his youth. This made Catherine suspicious that Alexei might secretly resent her for betraying his uncle Peter, and she began to fear that he might try to turn on her. So she reached out to her former tutor and lover, Sergei, and asked him to become her lover once again. Soon, she was seeing both men, and rumors of the affair began spreading around the Russian court. Still, nothing was done to stop it. Perhaps because those same rumors had already been true. Catherine was determined to have an heir of her own, and she confided in Shuvalov that she needed a child in order to secure her claim to the throne. But unfortunately, she suffered a tragic miscarriage shortly after. Catherine blamed herself for losing the baby, believing that her time as a young mother had already passed. But Shuvalov insisted that she could bear more children. Just a year later, she gave birth to her first son, Paul. And despite the boy's very obvious resemblance to Sergei, Catherine managed to keep her secret lovers hidden for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, as Catherine focused on her domestic life, the government was plunged into chaos by ambitious nobles. In an attempt to restore order, she dismissed her chief minister, Vorontsov, Count Minich, and replaced him with Ivan Shuvalov. While this seemed to solve the problem of governmental instability, Catherine soon learned that her new chief minister was corrupt and reckless with money. To make matters worse, he alienated many powerful members of the nobility, including her own father and brother, who had returned from exile. By 1757, it was clear to Catherine that she needed to do something drastic to save her regime. So she came up with a brilliant plan to consolidate her power. She had her uncle, Prince of Anhalt-Zerbst, invited to St. Petersburg to take on the role of her son, Paul's tutor. And she ordered her brother Peter to return to Germany with a noble title and a small pension. Finally, she invited her father to the Russian court to serve as her son's godfather. Then, as if everything was going according to plan, Shuvalov suddenly died, leaving the position of chief minister vacant. Catherine immediately invited her estranged father to fill the role, solidifying her authority over the empire. Although he was old and out of touch, he was still highly respected by the nobility and would effectively serve as a figurehead, while Catherine carried on her affair with Sergei and bore another son. Once again, all was well in the Russian Empire. Catherine the Great's legacy lives on in history today. Do you think she was a good or bad ruler? Why or why not? Let us know your thoughts, and thanks for watching.